Hello viewers, this is Dr. P. Mary Anupama, Assistant Professor, Department of Biochemistry, St. Joseph's College for Women, Visakhapatnam. Today, let us study about the second topic of environmental studies, that is ecosystem. In this video, you'll be learning the introductory concepts of ecosystem. Now coming to the concept of ecosystem. Before going to that, let us see about nature. Nature, it consists of two major components, namely the living organisms and the environment. Now what does this environment consist of? Environment, it's highly complex of conditions that surrounds the living organisms. So these conditions or these complex things that are a part of environment include the light, the temperature, water, gases, which all constitute the external factors. The organisms and the environment, they'll be interacting with each other and they are inseparable. And the entire nature is in a static state. And the organisms, their emissions are balanced by the environment. And you have an equilibrium maintained between the living organisms and the environmental conditions. So here this environment, it may be considered as a very large, the nature may be considered as a very large complex ecosystem. Okay, it may be considered as a very large complex ecosystem. It is also called as the ecological complex. As we were talking about the factors that the living organisms interact with, these are the physical environmental factors. These include the light, temperature, water and gases. All these affect the living organisms. Coming to some points about this ecosystem, the term ecosystem, it is actually coined by the British ecologist Tansley in the year 1935. Since 1935, we started using the term ecosystem, but previously many other terms were used. We have what is known as biocenosis, which was coined by Carl Moebius, and microcosm was used by S.A. Forbes, and geobiocenosis was used by Sukachev. Like this, we have many terms which were used previously before the term ecosystem was coined. Coming to the definition of ecosystem, ecosystem, it is the structural and functional unit of Earth. And we know that this ecosystem is the system in which all the living organisms and the environment, they'll be interacting with each other, they'll be exchanging materials with each other. That is, exchange of materials will be taking place between the environment and the living organisms. And planet Earth, it is the biggest ecosystems. We call it as a giant ecosystem. Now let us study the structural and functional components of ecosystem. Structural components means these include all the living organisms, the non-living organisms and all the other climatic factors. While coming to the functional components, these include components like the energy flow, the exchange of materials that are taking place between the various factors, all the nutrient cycles and so on. The structural components are again of two types. We have the abiotic components and the biotic components. Abiotic components means these include all the non-living components, while biotic components include all the living organisms. Under abiotic components, we have materials, climatic factors as well as energy. The abiotic components, again we can divide them into two, that is abiotic components material part. We can divide it into two. We have the organic material substances and inorganic materials and substances. So under inorganic materials we have the inorganic substances and water, while under organic ones we consider these macromolecules that we have, that is the proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, nucleic acids and so on. There is always a flow of material which is explained under these biogeochemical cycles or the nutrient cycles, which all of us know. So we have water cycle, carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle and all. But here what you have is that these organic components which you have seen in the previous slide, that is the proteins, carbohydrates and so on, once the animal dies, these organic components which are present in the living organisms, these are acted upon by microorganisms, and finally they are degraded and then they reach the soil as inorganic substances. So this is how organic components and inorganic components are related. Organic materials and inorganic materials are related. So the organic ones are again converted into inorganic ones, and through these cycles they reach the soil and again back to the living organisms. Coming to the abiotic components, under this we have climatic factors which include the light, temperature, atmospheric gases, atmospheric pressure, wind and rainfall. All these are the abiotic components, under that climatic factors. Let us study about the first abiotic component, that is the energy. We know that sun is the main source of the energy, and this energy is trapped by plants and finally it ends up as ATP, which is helping us to do all the work. It is the source of energy for all of us. And as the energy is flowing from the source, that is, say for example, from the sun to the plant and then to the individuals, as the energy is flowing through the ecosystem, it is diminishing. But the flow of energy is unidirectional, that is, it flows only in one direction. So here the solar energy radiation, it is converted into chemical energy by ATP, that is the energy source which is driving us. Or you can also see that this solar energy is trapped by the organisms and converted into some storage forms. For example, these storage forms we call them as the potential energy sources. So these potential energy reserves in us, that is in human beings it is glycogen, while in plants it is starch. So solar energy, either it is ending up as ATP or it is also present in the form of a potential energy reserve, that is glycogen or starch. Coming to the biotic components. These biotic components, it includes all the living organisms. So we have living organisms, means we can categorize them into photosynthetic organisms and non-photosynthetic organisms. So these photosynthetic organisms, we call them as the producers. Okay, these are the producers of the energy. They trap the solar energy and convert it into some chemical energy so that it can pass on through the other living forms. So these we call them as autotrophs. These are independent. They don't depend on any other organism except for sunlight. They convert the light energy into chemical energy. Now we have the other forms, that is the heterotrophs. Heterotrophs are the consumers. So these consumers, they depend on the autotrophs. That is, they'll be feeding on the autotrophs. The potential energy reserve, that is the starch or whatever it is that is present in the plants or the green ones, that is taken by the heterotrophs. Now when both of these die, the organic components present in these things are decomposed by decomposers, the microorganisms which are present in the soil. So we have producers, consumers and decomposers. The producers, when they die, they are decomposed, and even the consumers, when they die, they are decomposed by the decomposers. These are the three important components that we have. Now let us study about producers. Producers, these are the first components of any food chain. These are the ones which start the sequence of trapping the solar energy. These are the first ones of any food chain. These includes all the organisms that can convert the inorganic materials into organic ones. That is, say for example, plants are there. They convert the carbon dioxide into starch. So the inorganic carbon dioxide is converted into starch, which is the organic molecule, by these producers. So these producers, they are also called as converters or transducers. Conversion means one form of, say for example, inorganic one is converted into organic one. So that is why converters. Transducers means those which convert one form of energy to another form. Light energy is converted into chemical energy. So these producers, they trap the solar energy and convert it into chemical energy. This chemical energy, either it can be used or it can be sent to the food reserves. So we have plants and we have many microscopic as well as some macroscopic ones. Plants are the macroscopic ones, while we have small algae, small photosynthetic algae, phytoplanktons, which are microscopic, and these have chlorophyll or chlorophyll like pigments for doing this process of conversion. We also have bacteria as producers. So these bacteria, either they are photosynthetic or chemosynthetic. Photosynthetic means they have the chlorophyll, which converts the light energy into chemical energy, while we also have chemosynthetic ones. Chemosynthetic means they start releasing some secretions or some enzymes which lyse the bonds, okay, chemical bonds, and release energy. That energy is used for uh, producing some energy reserves for performing their works and all. So those we call them as chemosynthetic ones. Now coming to consumers. Consumers we call them as heterotrophs. These include all the animals, and these animals they'll be depending on the producers, okay, either directly or indirectly. So these consumers, these are also called as phagotrophs or macro consumers. So you can see that these consumers are again of three types. We have the primary consumers, secondary consumers, and tertiary consumers. So we have three types of consumers: primary, secondary, and tertiary. What are the primary consumers? Primary consumers are the herbivores. You can see here the panda eating leaves. So these depend on plants. So these are the primary ones which consume the plant, and these again become the source of food for the next level of consumers, that is the secondary and the tertiary consumers. Hence, these are also called as non-autotrophic producers. So here coming to their scale, they may be very small to very large terrestrial animals, or they can be even aquatic. Small means they can be small rabbits or squirrels. Large ones are the giraffe, elephants. They are the primary consumers, which are herbivores. Aquatic means we have small fish, which are again herbivores, and even the blue whale, which is a herbivore. And these animals, that is these primary consumers, they help the plants in their pollination as well as seed dispersal. So here are some examples. You can see here goat, sheep, cattle, caterpillars, beetles, birds, etc. And apart from that we have crustaceans, even mollusks. These are the aquatic primary consumers. Coming to the secondary consumers. Secondary consumers, yes, these are carnivores. These depend on the primary consumers. But you can see that some of these secondary consumers, they are omnivores. That means they can be herbivores as well as carnivores. Like here we can see the chick. They eat the worms as well as they eat seeds. So these are omnivores. And these occupy the third level of food chain, while the second level is by the primary consumers. First level of any food chain is by the producers, the plants. Second level is by the primary consumers. Third level is by the secondary consumers. These include the cat, dog, fowl, fish, the snakes, even we, the human beings. We are both herbivores as well as carnivores. So we are called as omnivores. Then the tertiary consumers. These are purely predators. Okay, they depend on both primary as well as secondary consumers. So we call them as the top carnivores. They occupy the last position of the food chain, and these include lion, tiger, eagle, vulture, hawk, and so on. All these are the predators which we know. Now talking about decomposers. Decomposers, these are the micro consumers, or we also call them as transformers. These are very small tiny things, and these are transformers because they decompose the large organic substances into the simpler inorganic forms, and they depend on the dead decaying organisms, both plants as well as animals. They use the chemical energy which is present in these animals, and then they build up their body. Okay, and one more thing is these decomposers, they play a very vital role in all the nutrient cycles, that is the biogeochemical cycles. And these decomposers examples include the saprophytic bacteria and even fungi which we find in the soil. Now let us study about the energy flow in ecosystems. Already we have seen that the energy flow is unidirectional only, and we have the thermodynamic laws which govern the flow of energy, mainly two laws of thermodynamics. They govern the flow of energy in these food chains. The first one, it says that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Yes, of course, the energy from the solar light, from the sunlight is trapped by the plants and then it is going to the next one. So here we are not creating an energy, but the sunlight is converted into another form of energy. So it is not created, we are neither creating it, the plants or us, we are neither creating it nor we are destroying it, we are just transferring. And now coming to the second one, second law, it states that during this transformation it is accompanied by dispersion. Yes, definitely we know that when the plant starch is consumed by us, yes, some of it goes to the food reserve as glycogen, while some of it is consumed for ATP production, some of it is consumed for maintaining our metabolic activities. To maintain the body temperature, we will be continuously dissipating some energy, dispersing some energy. So both the laws are operating. Here is a depiction to show unidirectional flow of energy. The solar energy is trapped by the plant. Say for example, this is the potato plant. So as the potato plant grows, it starts accumulating the food as tubers. As tubers, it starts accumulating it. So after it grows for a while, and if you just take out that, if you pluck it out, and if you see at the roots, you can find these tubers. So the solar energy is converted into potential energy, and this is consumed by the primary consumers. So light energy to chemical energy, and then this is becoming the food source for the primary consumers. Let us see some beautiful statistics here. So here you can see it is 1,81,872 gigacalories per centimeter square. This much amount of light energy it falls on the earth. Okay, every year this much of energy is falling on the earth. But out of this entire thing, only 47 to 48% is able to reach the earth's surface because it has to cross the atmosphere, and that accounts to around 111 gigacalories per centimeter square per year. This much is absorbed. Out of all this much is absorbed by the producers, and as it is absorbed by the producers, they start accumulating it. Okay, they use it for their growth, for their reproduction, for their respiration, all such things. Then it goes to the consumers, and then it goes to the decomposers. So this is the flow of energy in a ecosystem. So this is the ecosystem energetics which we'll be studying. In an ecosystem, we have this 10% law which governs this ecosystem energetics. That is, out of the entire energy which is consumed by, say for example, a primary consumer, say if it is consuming some 100 kg of plant biomass, only 10% of it is transferred. Say for example, this particular 100 kg biomass of plant, okay, it has around 10% of stored food. See, the entire plant cannot be a storage form of food. Okay, out of this 100 kg, maybe 10% of it is in the stored form, that is in the form of starch. Now say let us account it to some 100 kilocalories. Now when this is consumed by the herbivore, that is the primary consumer, only 10 kilocalories goes to it, while rest of it is dissipated. And when the herbivore is consumed by a carnivore, only 10% goes to this. Okay, out of the entire thing which is trapped by the producer, only 100 kilocalories is remaining here to be transferred to the herbivore, while herbivore it has just 10 kilocalories. It is just accumulating only 10 kilocalories. Now here it is just 1 kilocalorie, while the top carnivores, they have just 0.1 kilocalorie. So only 10% is getting transferred as the energy is flowing down the food chain. So this is what is 10% law, which is proposed by Lindemann in the year 1942, and this is true. Here is an example of energy flow in a freshwater ecosystem. Okay, say for example the same solar energy, it is reaching the autotrophs, and say gross production in the autotrophs of that fresh water, it is just 111 kilocalories, gigacalories per centimeter square per year. Now these plants, these can be consumed by herbivores, while some of its surfacing it's not utilized, some of the structural components is not utilized, some of it goes by respiration, while some of it goes to the decomposers. This is how it is split up. Around 70% is not utilized, 18% of it it's going in respiration, and decomposers they are just getting 3 calories. Now when these herbivores consume this, okay, now these herbivores may be consumed by the next level of carnivores. So out of all this, 7 gigacalories is not utilized, while 4.5 goes by respiration, while when they are decomposing only 0.5 reaches the decomposers, while here you can see the carnivores they are just getting 3. Now when this carnivore is dead, when this carnivore is dead, now you can see that the unutilized part is 1.2, and the amount that is reaching the decomposers it is in traces, while 1.8 is lost by respiration. So this is a representation of the 10% law and a split up of how the energy is getting diverted once the plant is consumed by the herbivore or the next level of carnivore, or when the animal is dying. This is how the energy starts dissipating. As we have discussed about the 10% law, but we cannot say that always this happens, we cannot say that it happens 100%. So at times, the transfer of energy when it comes to the carnivores to top carnivores, it may be around 20 to 30%. Okay, then we have one more term called as ecological efficiency. What is ecological efficiency? Is it is the ratio between energy assimilated or the energy available between any two trophic levels. So between producers, so the ratio is 1.55 for producers, while when you go to the top levels, that is the second trophic level, the third trophic level, and so on, it can go from 10 to 30% for the other trophic levels. So the 10% law may not be appropriate, so you cannot apply it in all the cases. Some more terms that we can learn here are the primary productivity, which says that it is the amount of energy accumulated in the green plants during photosynthesis. Then we have gross primary productivity. What is gross primary productivity is? It is the total organic matter synthesized by producers in the process of photosynthesis per unit time and area. Then we have the net primary productivity. The net primary productivity is the weight of organic matter stored by plants after respiratory loss and the other losses. Thank you.